All right, Scott Bass, Colby Plus is with us this morning. Beautiful Yamamoto neoprene rubber wetsuits.
Yeah, man. Colby Plus wetsuits. It is spring's actually, I think, on Thursday, tomorrow. But man, it's cold like wintertime here in San Diego. The water's 56. There's been tons of upwelling. It feels so good to have a warm, comfortable wetsuit, one that feels like it's just so comfortable. I'm hesitant to say it feels like my grandmother's quilt, but man, it's kind of like this cashmere. It's soft and buttery, so buttery, like warm butter over pancakes.
Mm, melts right into your cracks and crevices. Um,
Oh God.
there's mine right there. I've got mine
Oh,
hanging. I got the 4-3 and then a short sleeve that I can't wear yet, but I will shortly. Um, yeah, the cashmere I think is the best analogy. It is the cashmere of wetsuits.
right. Look at us, man. We're making marketing moves for Rob.
It feels
Cashmere wetsuits.
here now. I think you're doing yourself a disservice by wearing a undershirt under that cashmere sweater because it really zaps all the feel out of the cashmere. You can't feel it against your skin.
This is true. You know what? I stand corrected.
Okay, good. Take off that undershirt. All right, well, thanks. colbyplus.com. Direct to consumer, of course, is the key here. There's no hang tags, there's no branding, there's not even a logo on the wetsuit itself. It's all black, and that means cut out all the nonsense. You get a $300 top quality wetsuit for a $300 price, which is pretty incredible. So check them out at colbyplus.com. And then, of course, Real Water Sports actually just kicked off a springtime sale yesterday. So 2025 spring sale, Real Water Sports.
I got an email from friends at Real, and I got to admit, man, we've got a trip coming up here. It's a perfect time to kind of get your stuff together, the spring sale, get some new fins, get a couple leashes, get one of those Florence or Ashies, and you're prepped for your trip to Mexico or Indonesia or wherever your Southern Hemisphere plans take you this year. Now's the time to act at Real Water Sports.
Totally. Yeah. And I looked at some of the stuff that's on sale. Surfboards up to $500 off. And these are on Christensen's and Roger Hines boards. So like top tier stuff that are just discounted. And then other things that you just hate to buy throughout the course of the year, like a surfboard bag, a board bag for traveling or something. Now's the time, if you don't really care if it's the newest model or whatever, go on there and just benefit from a deep discount and get it cheap.
There you go. Now's
So
the time.
real,
Real water
yeah.
sport.
As we see some movement at the takeoff zone, it's Kelly Slater grabbing rail.
Yeah, guy. Yeah, guy. David, welcome. It is Spit. It is the Spit podcast. We talk all things surf and some other things as well. And it is, let's see, Wednesday, March 19th. Like I mentioned in the lead up here, I think the first day of spring is tomorrow, which I'm kind of looking forward to spring. I'm kind of done with winter. The waves have been lackluster here in Southern California as far as winter surfing is concerned. And the water's super cold, which is a bummer, but we do have our Colby wetsuits. And yeah, good morning, David.
Good morning, Scott Bass. Good to see you.
You know what? It's probably not good to see me because if you look,
I can see the chemical peels working.
yeah, the Dex. I've got the Dex chemical peel first. My dermatologist told me to take it rather than get the Mohs surgery. So, um, excuse me, I turned that off. Yeah, so I'm a little bit crusty and peely and dried out. It's a rather uncomfortable situation, but it's one that's it's a smart move. It's something that most people should probably do
So, how often do you go to the dermatologist?
twice a year.
That is the PSA, is go to the dermo twice a year. If they recommend this treatment, great, take them up on it, but at least just go. Skin cancer, or I should say dying from skin cancer, is unnecessary and preventable through early detection.
Right. This is a great PSA. And look in your past history. I know my mother had some skin cancer issues. And when I went in I had they had scheduled some Mohs surgery. I don't know if you know what Mohs surgery is. They basically just dig out the skin cancer until they've got it all. It's not pleasant and it takes a long time. And my doctor was was preparing me for the Mo's, and she goes, you know what? Let's just try the FUDEX and let's see what happens. Let's use that strategy. And so we did that, and the first time I did it last year, it worked great. I didn't have to do Mohs surgery. And so she's like, hey, look, let's do that again. Like let's just put this stuff all over your face and maybe on your hands and stuff, and it will burn away any potential cancerous cells. So yeah.
Amazing. Yeah, I'm not familiar with that treatment, but um, again, there are cancers that are hard to identify in early stages. And so maybe you don't identify it until it's late, and then it's very difficult to treat or resistant to treatment. Skin cancer is not one of those. Skin cancer is identifiable visually early on and then very treatable. And so, like I said, there is no need to die from cancer. There's no reason to die from skin cancer, I should say. It is avoidable. The death is avoidable through early detection and treatment. So go to the dermatologist. This is your PSA. Go see a dermo.
Yeah, good call. There you go. That's our springtime PSA.
So how does that affect you for El Salvador?
Well, that's a great question. It doesn't really. I'm going to be done with this thing in about 10 days on the 27th, I think.
Okay.
So then I can just put on sunscreen and lather up and stuff like that. And the uncomfortableness shall have passed hopefully by the time I get on an airplane.
I would just worry about you have a fresh face at that point. You're going direct to the equatorial sun, but I guess you just got to
Yeah.
stay covered.
Yeah, I'm gonna be lathered up and covered up and yeah.
Early morning sessions.
Yes, exactly. Exactly right, my friend. David, we've got kind of a big show. There's a lot going on. I have some answers to a reader email or a reader suggestion that we discuss what's happening with the surf models. And so I said, hey, let's reach out to Mark Sponsor, and he has some information for us.
Good.
I also have a new version of Who Said That. Instead, it's called Which Board Model Am I Talking About?
Wow, that's going to be a tough one.
I don't know. It might be easy. And then, we've got Survival League, which is, I don't know how you did. Who did you have?
Felipe, and I made it through.
Okay. Yeah, you're good. Okay. You're good. And I'm good too with Canoa. And of course, what's happening with the WSL. So that's kind of where I'm at. I'm sure you might have a few other things as well.
Yep.
And let's start somewhere. How about let's start with which board model am I talking about? David, I'm going to read to you an advertisement from a board model, from a surfboard company, and you're going to tell me which board model I'm talking about. You ready?
Are you going to give me the board company name?
No,
Okay.
I'm not going to give you anything but the text, the copy from the ad copy, but I've eliminated some things so that you have to guess. Okay, so now I will read and quote from the ad copy. Everybody wants it, no matter how you look at it. The only beautiful thing about this board is the way it handles in the water. There is a 20-inch nose, 1 foot from the tip, able to support full weight on takeoff or for cutbacks. Beauty prizes will never be given for the semi-parallel rails that hold smooth trim as the board glides down the wall of any wave, or give precision control in turning from the nose. And the really silly looking scooped out, popped up 6-inch square tail that sets into the water and causes downward pressure on the tail for an opposite reaction to the nose. What we're trying to say is that nobody cares how it looks because it was designed for function as an all-around board as well as a nose rider. End quote. I sense that you already know which I'm talking about.
I don't. I mean, this is actually really challenging.
Okay.
It's a nose rider, obviously.
Yeah, I'll give you 4 options.
Okay.
Yeah. So number 1, is this the Bing David Nueva nose rider? Number
Okay.
2, is this the Greg Knoll surfboard Mickey Dora Decat model? Number 3, is this the Con Surfboards the ugly model? Or number 4, is this the Holmesy Sidewinder?
I'm going to go A, Bing Nueva model.
You are wrong, David, but that's a good guess. This is the Con Surfboards the ugly model. And you should have known that because the only beautiful thing about this board is the way it handles in the water. It's ugly. This board is ugly. The ad states it's ugly. We admit it's ugly, but this board is functional. It works great. We have, of course, David, one of these 1967 Con surfboards, the ugly model. This is a board that Bob Purvey went on to win a portion of the Tom Moray long nose riding invitational adventure at C Street in the 60s. This board is a nose riding gem. We have a really gorgeous in really great to excellent condition Con surfboards, the ugly, in the upcoming California Gold Surf Auction, which takes place April 5th through April 19th.
Interesting. Where did you get that advertisement? Do you know what era that magazine was or which magazine?
Yeah, it's from the mid 60s, like Surfer magazine.
Okay. Let
Yeah.
me see if I happen to have that issue right here in front of me, Scott.
Wow, look at you. Did you just get these?
No, I just dug them up out of my garage though.
You're kidding.
No.
That's awesome that you have those. I am envious. I'm actually looking for something like that.
How
It's
incredible is
one of
this?
those. Yeah, like 60. I I should know which I think I'm gonna say like 68, 1968 maybe is that photo, that one right there. Who is that? Do you know who that is?
Is that Lance Carson?
That is Lance Carson. A lot of people think that's Mickey Dora, but that's Lance Carson.
I mean, how iconic is this?
That is I think those are pretty sought after. Some of those early surfers, they've got, there's some people that want this. 1966 Con surfboard. That's what we have.
Okay.
1966. So yeah, the ad probably comes from 65 or 66. And Bob Purvey, he outrode the top professionals in the 66 Invitational Nose Riding Contest at Ventura with a nose riding time of 41 and a half seconds for 6 wave, an average of 7 seconds per wave. He was on the tip of the board, the nose.
Crazy. Yeah, Lance Carson at Rincon, shot by Ron Stoner. Yeah, the one that, I mean, if you're not on YouTube, you can't see these magazines that I'm holding up, but these are all mid 70s, or I'm sorry, mid 60s mint condition surfer mags. And I hold it up because the surfboard advertisements stuck out to me too. You think when you pick up an older magazine that you're interested in the articles or the surfers or whatever, and it's like the ads are actually just as interesting as everything else. And in digging through, I have a bunch from like the 80s and the 90s and the 2000s as well. But it's like Rusty selling watches and Gordon and Smith selling clothing and all these little detours that these companies took that just totally I forgot about. I was raised on it and I saw it at the time, but I had forgotten about, or I've gotten to know the owners of
That
those
one right
companies now.
there, what year is that one? Like 97?
98. Your name is in the masthead.
Yeah, I thought that's when I was working there. Yeah.
Yeah, your name is in here. It might have been before you did the online editor's job, and
Yeah, I might have been an intern.
it was intern. It was a editing intern because I did look that up. I can't find it now, but
The Lance Carson photo is so iconic. And just a side note, we also have an incredible Lance Carson hand-shaped, gorgeous 1966 pintail, three-stringer pintail Lance Carson model that's incredible.
yeah,
Probably my favorite board in the auction. It's one of those ones where you're like, okay, this board, like if you went to Lance and said, build me a board, he'd make you that board and it would work insane. A lot of these 60s boards work so good. You mentioned the Bing David Nueva Nose Rider. That board is, guys today are trying to copy that board and they can't get it nailed because the foam was different then. The glass jobs were different. The Volan's heavier. There's certain things you just cannot replicate from a 1960s longboard.
which is why I think it's great to not replicate entirely. Like take from those elements what you like, but also keep in mind modern considerations, because you'll never replicate it entirely.
Yeah.
So I'm going to give you your own quiz, Scott.
Okay. Yeah.
1964 Surfer Pole Awards.
Yeah.
This is the second ever Surfer Pole Awards. Do you have any guess who won? And I can give you a top five if you want.
I mean, my guess is it's it's either Phil Edwards or David Nueva.
Phil is in the top five, but David Nueva is not.
Oh,
So
really?
top
Corky
five
K.
in top five in no particular order.
Hmm.
Joey Cabell, Phil Edwards, Fred Hemmings, Mike Doyle, Midget Fairley.
Oh, it's got to be Doyle.
Yeah, Doyle. Doyle, you're local boy, right?
Yeah, what a cool guy, man. He was such a cool guy. Very nice man.
I'm gonna read a little bit about Doyle from Surfer Magazine. Uh, Mike Doyle, 24 years old, senior in biology at San Diego State College. He has an eye on a teaching career after his surfing career is finished, but Big Mike doesn't expect to stop entering contests for a long time. I'm going to move down the article just to read a quote from Mike, and it says, winning the title hasn't changed any of my plans. In the immediate future, I'll be shaping boards for Hansen, and I have one more semester at San Diego State before I get my degree in biology. Eventually, I'll go into teaching, but the teaching credential has been a bit pushed back by all of this surfing. I plan to keep competing in surfing for as long as I can. I have a competitive attitude, and that's the way I built my whole reputation by competing, by the rumor, not by rumors being put around that I was good or the best at surfing. I just built my whole self through competition. And I think that's a good word of advice to any surfer who wants to make a name. It's pretty hard now to get a reputation just by being in surf movies or magazines. Richard Chu is doing the same thing I am. He's built his reputation by winning contests. So is Corky Carroll. These two guys have built themselves completely through competition. That's the way I do it, I think.
That's very interesting, right? Because it's kind of the polar opposite of what's happening today. You just put out some clips on Instagram and you're instantly a professional surfer without any competitive chops.
Totally. That's a
Yeah.
photo of him at Waimea Bay, by the way,
You
by
know what's so
Leroy
cool about
Grannis.
Doyle and those guys and Joey Cabell and that whole era is that those guys all competed in paddleboard races. Like they were very proud of their ability to paddle long distances, to be the best, the fastest paddler. Those guys did those incredible, and in fact, paddle races were parts of competition, back then.
Yeah,
So,
they
tip
were
of the cap,
watermen,
they were full on watermen.
When you look at their physique, it shows it too.
Exactly. I mean, Joey Cabell and Mike Doyle, those guys are like 6'3", 6'4", 210 pounds, like they're rock solid and they're lanky. They're kind of
Yeah,
like a lanky, they'd be really good, like forwards in the NBA or something.
totally. Um, Final question. Look at it's even got the little mail-in subscription envelope that you could tear off and send in. These things are mint.
Dude, you got a mint collection there. It's funny, at one point I know I threw away all my surfer magazines and I'm super bummed about it. I did the same thing with Surfer's Journal. I was just like cleaning my garage. I'm like, I never look at these things. And I was just in one of those moods where I'm like, I'm over it. Like I
So,
gotta clear out my garage.
you know what I've learned, or what I just learned
Yeah.
this week,
Yeah.
is there's an interim period where it is a waste of space and a waste of hanging on to. You got to push past that until you hit nostalgia. And it's probably 30 years time that has to lapse. But once you bust them out in the nostalgia phase, they're gold.
Yes, I agree. I mean, I'm even one of these geeks, like I'll pick up a 1950s National Geographic
Oh,
and just
yeah,
look at it all and just be like, oh, look, there's some cigarette ads in here.
I know. Yeah. So, my final quiz for you is based on this subscription card, um, how much was 1 year subscription, 6 issues to Surfer Mag in 1964?
Let's see, 6 issues, 1 year subscription. I'm gonna say for a year, I'm gonna say 9.99.
$4 flat.
Wow.
The cover price is 75 cents.
Wow. I would have got ripped off.
Take my money. We got to figure out how to share these with the world.
Those are so cool.
I mean, I could digitize them or I could just do a video flipping through.
Yeah, I don't know. You got to be careful. There's probably some trademark issues with, I don't know,
Come on, surfer.
Jake
We
Howard's
just
gonna.
want we just more eyeballs the better, right?
I agree.
Yeah.
Totally.
Cool, man. Well, glad to be able to share that with you.
That's cool. I'm stoked that you have those. And like I
More
said,
surf more surfboard ad copy. It's interesting too. Marketing of surfboards is a whole subject that we could spend an episode on.
they did it. I agree. I mean, especially, with the news that Matt Parker's taken over Morning of the Earth surfboards. Um, and the marketing is so clever. Like the 60s surfboard marketing is very clever. Like today, I think it's like you go on Instagram and you're like, Jack Robinson's riding my board, watch him rip. And and as an end user, you're like, okay, that looks like a good board. I'm buying now. But back then they were, like this Con Ugly ad, and they were, and the Greg Knoll cat advertisements were just incredible. Like they were just really well thought out and fun and different. And yeah.
Yeah. Let's go ahead and talk about the Matt Parker Morning of the Earth. I've gotten probably 5 DMs asking about it, and then Stab Magazine just did an interview with Matt. I did not read the interview yet, but I can answer the question that people have been DMing. I talked to Matt Parker about this a few months ago. Um, Simon Jones stepped away from the Morning of the Earth label. So, and I actually talked to Simon about this probably last year when he was going to come to the boardroom show. But Simon, Morning of the Earth is a brand identity, obviously based on the film. And when Simon originally connected with them, it all made a lot of sense. He was making boards that were kind of that design philosophy, let's say, but modernized a little bit. But his demand blew up, like through Torrin Martin and all of his success. There's been so much demand on Simon and his boards, and he was experimenting with newer designs with Torrin. And so what he started making just was no longer, I think, fully in line and reflective of Morning of the Earth and their brand identity. And so there was a mutual parting of ways, as I understand it, no contention at all, more of just a appreciation for one another's work. So Simon still loves Morning of the Earth. Morning of the Earth still loves Simon, but Simon was like, I need to be able to meet the demand of, my client base basically. And so Simon's son actually got involved in the business as a laminator and helping manage some of the stuff. And their ambition is still not to go massive scale. They're keeping things tight and small, but this just by rebranding as Jones Designs allows them a little bit more autonomy and a little bit more being able to just do whatever they want to do essentially without having to consider the legacy of Morning of the Earth. But that left Morning of the Earth available. And incidentally, Matt Parker, a conversation and an ongoing conversation that I've been having with him for a couple of years, is that he has manufacturing set up in multiple locations, a couple in California, and I think more than one in Australia. And their focus is low production, high quality. Employ artisans to make high quality constructed surfboards. And so you can really, it's difficult to do that at a large scale. That's why there's multiple locations set up to do it. But so his goal isn't to make Album the biggest surf brand in the world. The goal is to keep Album small and controllable and all that sort of stuff. But because they have these facilities, they do have the labor power to make more surfboards. So there's an opportunity to do something like Coco Hose label, where it's like we can now make more surfboards, but they're under two different labels, servicing two different ideals and client bases. And that's, I think, where Morning of the Earth fits in perfectly alongside those other brands, where Morning of the Earth doesn't want to do thousands and thousands of boards a year, but they do want high quality surfboards. And Matt has this team of artists making those surfboards. So that's where that deal happened. And I think it services everybody basically.
Well, you know what? Tip of the cap to Matt. He's quite a businessman, and he it seems like everything he does is super high quality. I guess the question I might have for Matt is, and for you is, and his challenge, I guess, is to differentiate between Album and Morning of the Earth, because in many ways they're sort of like both alternative craft, ASIMs and fishes and twins and mid lengths and the Coco models obviously differentiates because it sort of has a feminine aesthetic.
Yeah.
But so I guess that will be his challenge, and I'm sure he knows what he's doing, and he'll step up to the challenge. But because the Morning of the Earth thing, like I said, it seems like, Torren Martin, 610 rounded pin twin fins. It feels very kind of in the same category, I guess.
Yeah, I think his answer is that's a that is a mischaracterization. He's elected to work with brands that are totally divergent. So the Morning of the Earth stuff's probably fuller volume, um, you know, traditional designs, and the ASIM stuff, like they don't do ASIMs, but the ASIM stuff, Album is all about progressive and high performance. The boards that Victor Bernardo are riding are lower volume, asymmetrical, stuff like that. So
Yeah.
high performance versus traditional would be the separation.
Okay, good.
But
Well, I wish everyone all the best. I think it'll be exciting to see. That is such an iconic label, and just it's not even a label. It's weird. It's not even really a brand. I mean, of course, it's a brand if you boil it down in a business school, but it's like a vibe. It's like an aesthetic. It's like a
it's an identity.
place and time. You know what
Yeah.
I mean?
Yep. Um, and so I think it's best news for the consumer because, you we know people, listeners out there have put it in order, let's say, with Morning of the Earth years ago and are still waiting to hear back because there was just that much demand on those boards. And so this creates a scenario where you can order a Simon Jones design and get it, or you can order a Morning of the Earth design and get it, and you can order an album and you can get that. So
Yeah.
I think it just makes more surfboards available for everybody, basically.
Yeah. Well, for sure, that's a good thing. And I'm stoked for those guys. I'm stoked for it. Sounds like all three of them too, like Albie, Matt, and Simon are all in a good place about it.
Oh,
There's
totally.
no,
Yeah.
there's no weird BS and so good for them,
Yeah.
doing it
Totally
like
agree.
adults.
Yeah. Do you want to discuss, we didn't mention it in the top of the show, but Shane Herring's passing.
Yeah, it's funny. I don't have a whole lot of I was sort of off the rails myself during his time in the limelight. Like I don't have any emotional, oh, I remember that heat with Shane Herring because I was, and it's not that he wasn't a great surfer or anything, but so I'm not as emotionally tied to it. So maybe why don't you give me your take? Because I sense that this was right in your wheelhouse when you were probably a teenager.
Yeah, I'll be glad to. Let me ask you, when you've seen the footage in this past week, what are your thoughts on the surfing?
I mean, if I was to be hypercritical about it, I mean, obviously he's a great surfer. I would say that he wasn't. I don't want to talk shit about Shane Herring, so I'm just gonna say he was a great surfer, and it
I was
looked like
blown
he
away
was
by the
having fun.
footage.
It looked like he was having fun.
I was blown away by the footage. He was a little bit before my time actually. So it was a name that I was aware of and I saw clips of him periodically in older videos, but I didn't have a full exposure to him until now when I'm watching the footage and I'm like, holy cow, like he surfs incredibly. Just that raw talent, like that unbridled, youthful kind of raw talent that is so great to see. And then the question comes with like, God, what happens to people? Because we have even in modern days these young guys that show up out of nowhere and are, Dane Henry. I'm watching clips of now from Australia, and I'm like, oh my gosh, just insane. But through, I think, engaging in the contest format, the surfing just gets homogenized. And then once you get a couple of big accolades, then you're trying to live up to the accolades and servicing that rather than just going out and exploring free expression. And so there is something really exciting about an 18 to 21-year-old surfer at the peak of their athleticism where they have no expectations or trappings or something, that is electric. I feel like that's where we see so much of the most exciting surfing. Anyways, the reason why you don't have thoughts on any of the heats um, is because he didn't really surf that many heats. In 1992, he beat Kelly Slater in the final of the Coke Classic at North Narrabeen. This was the very first pro event that either of them had entered. So,
Really?
yeah. And
Are you sure?
Shane won in the final. That's what, yes.
Okay.
So, Kelly went on, of course, to become a household name. Shane, on the other hand, dropped out of sight
What about
completely.
the lowers event that Kelly won? Wasn't that his very first professional event?
Uh,
The lowers event, it was called, it might have
Bud
been
Surf Tour.
PSAA. Yeah.
Um,
I thought that was his very first event, but maybe I'm
w-
wrong. Because it
well,
feels like maybe this was the first ASP event that he was in.
the text says the very first pro surf event that either had entered. This is from Tracks magazine.
I
So I
wonder
don't
if
know. We'll have to.
ASP rather, because I feel, but yeah. Well,
Well,
listeners know there's people right now. Tony Roberts is typing up the name.
what year was the lowers event?
Shoot, I don't know.
Because this was 92. But is it possible that the lowers event is the first pro event that Kelly won, and this is the first event that Kelly entered?
Um,
Are you Googling right now?
Trying to Google it up here.
Um, 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 um,
1990 was the Bud Tour event.
so that was 2 years prior to this
And
Coke
guess
event.
what? I pulled up the very first thing that pulled up was Tony Roberts' Real Surf Stories on YouTube.
Perfect.
Hey, Kelly Slater changed surfing 1992 Bud Tour trestles.
1992. So this was 92 as well.
No, 90.
Oh,
1990.
90. So, anyways, we'll get to the bottom of that later. But Shane, so that was the entry into Shane's professional surf career that I just gave you. He passed away this week. He was 53 years old. Reportedly, although Herring had long battled with addiction, he had taken a fall down the stairs. He grabbed a bite to eat in the middle of the night, went to the fridge, and then, like, he fell down the stairs, got to the fridge, ate some food, went back to sleep, and then just never woke up. So possible that he sustained a head injury from that fall. But totally kind of a sad situation. To give you listeners proper history on Shane from Matt Warshaw's Encyclopedia of Surfing, meteoric Australian pro surfer from Sydney's DY Beach, ranked number 4 that year because of that win in 1992. Herring was born in 71 to a lifeguard father and barmaid mother and began surfing as a toddler. In his teen years, he developed a low, streamlined crouch and cornered through turns with the precision of a Formula One driver. When he turned pro in 1991, he was described by Waves magazines as having, quote, the purest style of his generation. The purest style. Herring had no amateur career to speak of. His high point as a competitive surfer came in April 1992. So April 92, and the lowers event would have been in the summertime.
Well, it was in September of 90.
Oh, shoot. That's right. I keep forgetting. Different year. When he defeated Kelly Slater in the finals of the Coke Classic at Sydney, the 20-year-old freckle-faced Aussie regular footer was still living at home, and a good portion of his $25,000 in prize money went to pay for the expenses left over from his mother's recent brain surgery. A first strike of the new age, surf journalist Derek Hines said of Slater and Herring's Coke Classic duel, which left Herring on the top of the rankings. Quote, these two will battle for future championships, Hines promised. Herring was the first and perhaps most adept surfer user of the banana board design, which featured an exaggerated nose and tail rocker. The boards allowed for tight in the pocket maneuvering, Herring's specialty, and but trimmed poorly and resisted long radius turns. 8 months later, Slater won, another devotee of the banana board, won the 1992 world title, went on to take another 5 before the decade was over. Herring never won another contest again, and 2 years later, he was off the tour entirely. Even before the Coke contest, comparisons were being made between Herring and the 1970s Gold Coast surf star Michael Peterson. Both were electrifyingly talented with charisma to burn, and both were destined to flame out early. Peterson from drug amplified schizophrenia, and Herring from acute alcoholism. Australian surf journalist Tim Baker visited Herring in 2005 and reported that the one time golden child doesn't own a surfboard any longer. He was getting over pancreatitis and nursing a broken collarbone after a drunk wrestling match with a roommate's pit bulls. And he said, I battled my demons every day. And then a couple of other things have been written about him. I would say the best thing that's been written about him actually is an article that Derek Hind wrote for Surfing World magazine. I'll call that my must read moment this week. Not my must see moment, but my must read moment. No Place for Young Men is the name of the article, and I'll link to it, but you can Google it and find it at Surfing World.
Well, it's interesting what you read. The one thing that stuck out to me was this idea that MP flamed out early. Michael Peterson owned the 1970s in Australia, like basically 10 years. I mean, I bet from 72 or 71 to 77, a solid 8 years, let's call it maybe 10, where he was kind of untouchable. And he went over to Hawaii and just absolutely killed it in at Sunset Beach. So that's just one thing from Matt's thing that I was like, did MP really flame out early? I wonder what Sean Doherty would say about that. I'm not an MP expert, but I don't know if flamed out early is anyway. I know we're talking about Shane, but that one stood out to me. What are your thoughts? Did MP flame out early?
A decade isn't early, but it's early by comparison to so many others that are still at it today, 5 decades on.
I mean,
So
in the 70s, if you were 28 years old, you were old
yeah.
as a professional surfer.
Yeah. I'll send Matt a note. He can edit this, edit this encyclopedia entry.
No. I don't. That's the last thing Matt needs is me being hypercritical about his stuff. But whatever.
No,
But
hear
Shane
you.
Herring, a sad situation for sure.
Yeah, totally. And just such, again, to see that youthful footage is electrifying. So rest in peace, Shane
The
Herring.
surf world is littered, and I think a lot of sports are littered with young superstars that were handed a lot of responsibility and didn't really couldn't really cope with it, and it's an unfortunate situation, but it's probably happening right now as we speak.
Totally is. It's going to continue to happen. I mean, there's no guide map for how to handle you collapse under the weight of your own talent. You know what I mean? Like the world wants things of you, and there's no way to know how to handle that. And even if you have great parents and support system and all that sort of stuff, you're going to trip along the way. And hopefully you can get up and kind of sort it all out and make it
Yeah.
right. But it's still, life is complicated. When life is tough, it's complicated. And when life is great, you will create your own complications.
By the way, speaking of Kelly Slater, look what they sent me. I'm sure you got a pair too. The new
No, I didn't get a
APEX
pair of this.
Outerknown board shorts, which debuted yesterday. I just randomly got these Amazon delivered and I had no idea they were coming my way.
Who sent them?
Outerknown.
Somebody there specifically, though.
Probably Dylan, or I'd like to think Kelly actually put them in the envelope and stamped it and sent it to my address. But
I can smell his musk on him. I feel like he rubbed them in his armpits.
But I'm going to be bringing these to El Salvador. They're nice and stretchy, and they're made out of like fishing net, like recycled fishing net.
Right. Yeah, I've seen
They'll
those.
be in the bag next to my drifties.
No, they did not send me some. Wink,
Wow.
wink. But I do have my own Kelly's. His sunblock company did DM me on Instagram, Freaks of Nature.
Oh,
They're like, hey, we want to send you some product. And
bring some of that with. I'm going to need some sunscreen in El Salvador.
yeah, they haven't followed up yet, but maybe they will by the time we leave. But I have my own Kelly Slater story for you because when I found
Hold that story. What
Okay.
a great lead in. We've got an incredible David Lee Scales, Kelly Slater story. We'll be right back.
All right.
Okay.
FanDuel.com/surf. When the games tip off, the NBA action is just beginning on FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. Because FanDuel is your home for NBA live betting and the official sports betting partner of the NBA. So even if you miss the first few minutes of the game or you want to bet on a fourth quarter comeback, you can make your picks from the first whistle until the final buzzer. Plus, you can even combine your bets into a same game parlay for a shot at a bigger payout. However you want to play, now is the perfect time to join. New FanDuel customers get started with $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Just visit FanDuel.com/surf fanduel.com/surf to join today. That's fanduel.com/surf for your shot at $150 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Must be 21 and older and present in select states, or 18 and older and present in DC. First online real money wager only. $5 first deposit required. Bonus issued as non-withdrawable bonus bets, which expire 7 days after receipt. Restrictions apply. See terms at sportsbook.fanduel.com. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit fanduel.com/RG. Call 1-888-789-7777 in Connecticut or visit mdgamblinghelp.org in Maryland. Hope is here. Visit gamblinghelplinema.org or call 800-327-5050 for 24/7 support in Massachusetts, or call 1-877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY in New York. Had to get my mid-show refuel of drinkag1.com/surf so we can make it all the way through the bonus show.
Oh yeah. Look, you know what? I'm gonna go get me some of that for the bonus show too. ag1.com/surf. All your energy, all your vitamins, minerals, probiotics, all right there in one simple 8-ounce flavorful green drink from AG1.
You know what else you're probably unaware of? Comes with a 90-day money-back guarantee.
Hell to the yes.
What the heck? Why wouldn't you do it at that point?
It
So
really is a simple, all hyperbole aside, it's not that we were being hyperbolic, but it's such a simple way to get all the goodness. It's such goodness, when you drink it, you're like, yeah, there's like a sense of goodness that's come over me.
Yep. My wife does it every single day too. I've never really talked to her haven't talked to her about it in years, but every morning she gets up before me. I go and I look in the sink and there's an empty container there. So she's
Wow.
on the program too.
She doesn't clean her bottle. What's the deal?
What's that?
She didn't clean her bottle?
She eventually does.
That was quite diplomatic of you. Good move there, bud.
By the time I'm up, she has not cleaned it yet, but she is quite the homemaker, I should say. Homekeeper.
Well, tell me
Okay.
about your Kelly Slater story here.
So when I unearthed all these surf magazines in the garage, I also came across some artwork from my younger brother. And it is a picture of Kelly Slater.
That's cool, man. Look at him go there.
How funny is that? So the paper is all yellowed and brittle, but my younger brothers, who knew I was super into surfing, they had some awareness of who Kelly Slater was. And one of them in preschool or kindergarten drew this, apparently. And I saved it.
Sweet. That's cool, man.
Yeah. I think I'll tag Kelly on Instagram about this. See if you can repost that for me.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, do you want to talk Portugal?
Yeah, you know what? Before we do that, if you don't mind, let's just real quick get into. We had a listener. Let me just share what he wrote to us. He was concerned with something that's kind of interesting. He goes, "Hey, when are you guys going to address the elephant in the room, the culling of an insane amount of NOAA and National Weather Service employees? How is this going to affect the surf world?" And we touched on this last week, and I said, hey, let's contact Mark Sponsler about it because he's the guy that would know. And if you don't know who Mark Sponsler is, he runs a great website and service called stormsurf.com. And so Mark, at the beginning of his weekly YouTube video, addressed this. And he said, look, here's what I'm hearing, that NOAA is going to be cutting 20% of its workforce, shuttering numerous buildings, one of which houses the supercomputer that runs all of the models. NOAA, their own projections is that it will take 1 year to move the supercomputer. So that would mean that the models will be down for an entire year. Now, has this happened? No. Is this going to happen? We don't know. Will it affect hurricane season and farmers? Of course, anybody that needs information, it's going to affect. But he says, look, maybe it won't happen. Right now, we just don't know what's going to happen. So his sense is that he can't imagine that this would happen, that they would shut down the supercomputer. Again, the building that the supercomputer is in. they are leasing it, and they've been told to get out of the lease and to shut down the building. So it's basically wait and see.
Fair enough. But what are the implications if it does happen? That's what I want to know.
No supercomputer models for a year. You can imagine taking down a supercomputer, unplugging it, and then moving it to a different facility and plugging it back in. It's quite an ordeal. And it doesn't seem like it would take a year, but these are NOAA's own projections that it would take a year to move the supercomputer from where it's at now to a new location.
Yeah, I guess we know those firings have already happened. And when I read that article last week and it was talking about there's maintenance on these computers, there's maintenance on the equipment, the physical equipment itself, and those staffers have been let go. So if something breaks or needs to be replaced, I could see maybe they don't get out of the lease right away and they don't have to move the computer immediately, but it can slowly just start breaking down in small bits, you know? And so an individual model stops working or a certain region stops working or something like that. And then I think you're right, or I think he's right in that there's no way this thing stops operating completely, but the administration will wear down or erode the workforce enough to where parts of it break, and then they have to create a solution. And the solution for retraining, rehiring, and refixing is going to end up costing them far more money than they saved by eliminating those staffers in the first place.
Yeah, I mean, to be clear, they think they've cut 10% of the force and they're expecting an additional 20% of the force to be cut. So,
yeah,
again, Mark's own words were he can't imagine that this would happen.
Yeah.
That it might not happen, that it hasn't happened yet.
well,
But they have been given, there is an executive order that was given to NOAA to do these things. They were supposed to close like whatever 20 buildings and blah, blah, blah.
yeah. Well, he's closer to it than I am, so I'd say listen to him more than me, but it sounds ominous.
It does. It does. So yeah, let's get on to Portugal. And why don't you begin with your comments? I have something I want to say about it as well.
My initial comments are I have not watched the event. Obviously, it runs in the middle of the night for us, but when I do wake up, I try to chime in or catch the important stuff. And it's been uninteresting to try to keep track of. There was, I guess, portion of a day of good waves, or at least big hollow surf, but otherwise very, very marginal surf. I talked about potentially picking Griffin Colapinto for my survival pick. I am thrilled that I did not, even though he's won this event twice in various conditions. He lost in the round of 32, so I'm glad I dodged that bullet. I went with Felipe and, of course, made it through the round of 32 with Felipe. Aaron Brooks and Caitlin Simmers was one heat I did watch the recap of, and it was cool to see those two go head to head. Aaron Brooks came out at the top of that exchange, which was surprising to me, but those are my only thoughts thus far.
Well, first of all, we talked about Griffin last week. Remember, he had kind of two lackluster results, and now this is the third lackluster result. I think last week we were like, "Hey, look, two results. You know what? It's too early to say. Push the panic button." This was a great heat, actually. This kid, Mignot, I think it might be Marcus Mignot.
Marco. He's from Sayulita. He flies the French flag, but he lives in Sayulita.
He landed some insane airs, and all of a sudden Griffin had his back to the wall with like 5 minutes left. He had to basically match these airs that Mignot was doing, and he attempted to, but didn't complete it. And it was a pretty close heat, but yeah, Griffin's got to be feeling a little bit of pressure here as we move through this next part of the tour.
So I watched the recap of that heat, and I thought Griffin looked incredible once again, just like he did in the previous two events. Backside, just really amazing surfing. Marco landed that one big air on a closeout right. So he went for the glory and he got it. It was a big wave too. And he got it. And so again, I kind of feel like Griff, don't beat yourself too up about this one because 9 surfers out of 10 would not have landed that maneuver on Marco's behalf, and you stuck to your game plan, would have won 9 out of 10 heats.
I agree with you. And this is what we were talking about last week too, that those two results that he got there, it's not like he was surfing bad or that his strategy was wrong or that he wasn't in the right mental state. Like I think he checked all the boxes. He's had like a series of horrible, I guess, bad luck is what it is.
Yeah.
Because, Marcus, he nailed these incredible aerials. So we'll see what happens with Griff, but certainly he's not where he wants to be. But there's so much time left in the season, so I'm sure he's going to
No,
rebound.
there's not that much time left before the cut.
Oh,
Can you imagine a Griffin Colapinto cut?
Wow, that would not be good.
That would be shocking. I'm going to pull up the rankings real quick just so we could see.
Well,
where he
while you
actually
do that, let me bring up my thoughts. So I don't know if you saw Jack Robinson's first wave of his round of 32 heat.
I did.
Did you see it? I think most people saw it. I actually have it on my phone. I could send it to you if you want. My thoughts about this are, look, he basically made this late drop, did a powerful carving bottom turn, snuck under the lip, rode, just set his inside rail super high and tight, and drove through this meaty Super Tubes right-hand tube that eventually you thought he was gone, and he drove through it and was just fire hose spat out of it and almost came out. It blew everyone away that he was even possibly at the end of this section. And then he got engulfed by it as the left turned into the right and it clamped down on him. And everybody that saw this, including you, I'm going to speak for you now, everyone was like, that was incredible. That was insane. That was like a level of surfing technique that was beyond excellent. It was, incredible, right? And he got a 2.83 for this ride. And I sort of thought to myself, you know what? We kind of have to get away from this you got to make it mentality to score an excellent ride. That was by all measures an excellently ridden wave. And I get it that we have this you got to make it mentality for Pipeline and for Chopu. I understand, and I think we should keep that mentality. But at other locations, it seems to me, maybe I'm wrong, but it seems to me that 99% of the world's surf spots, at spots that aren't solely just tube locations, we should recognize and reward excellent surfing technique. In my mind, that should have been a 7. Just because he didn't make that last thing that just exploded on him. It was incredible surfing technique. Not very many people would have done what Jack Robinson, where he got to on that wave, where he ended up. I feel like a 2.83. I feel like we're missing something. I feel like we need a readjustment. Your thoughts on this?
Totally agree, other than why do you think it's location dependent?
Well, because at Pipeline, you're there to get tubed. That's it. And at Chopu, you're there to get tubed. That's it. So to get tubed at a tube riding spot, that's why we're in the water. That's why we put the jersey on. You got to make it.
So I think that everything that you said is still relevant. I just don't think it's location dependent. If they put in that same level of expertise at pipe and just don't make the final section at back door, I think they should still be rewarded as well. We would have to think a little bit further about whether or not you apply this logic to all maneuvers. If you land 90% or 90% completion on an aerial maneuver and then don't ride out of it, should that also be counted for 90%? I'm not sure. I have to think about that a little more. And in fact, I think I've argued against that probably here in years past. But now that we're looking under this lens, I totally agree with you because it encourages risk to be taken and it encourages surfers to push the envelope. And I think ultimately then progresses surfing. If you're then incentivizing people to take safer bets, which is I'm not going to go on the closeout, drained out one because I might not make it. I'm going to nurse a wide open left and just do a couple of cutbacks on it to get a 6 or a 4. That's Jack got a 2. I just need a 4, and I'm going to take safety surf the thing. That's the current model that we're under, and it incentivizes the wrong idea, which is safety. Let's incentivize progression, balls to the wall. We will reward it. If you happen to not make it, you still get a certain amount of points because of your proved prowess.
Yeah, I love balls to the wall. That is what we need to reward. And that's what we saw. That's exactly what we saw from Jack Robinson. And we do see it at Pipe. There was a recent clip of a guy, I wish I could remember, but it was just insane. And it was kind of like this, like fire hosed out and just at the very end kind of dove off onto the corner. It wasn't in a heat or anything, but it was just like the wave of the winter,
Mhm.
maybe. Do you know which one I mean? I forget
Was
who.
it at Pipe?
Yes. It
Yeah, I
was
saw that wave.
it was recent. I can't remember the surfer's name, but it was mental.
Well, it was a not very well known surfer.
Yeah, was it somebody named Reef, but not Reef McIntosh, maybe? I
I
feel
don't
like his
remember.
IG handle had Reef in it, but
I want to say, was it Cheyenne Crawford?
it might have been Cheyenne. That's who I was thinking too, but I don't know. Anyway, it was insane.
Cheyenne.
But it was balls to the wall. That's what we're getting at here, right? Let's reward balls to the wall surfing. Maybe we need a better catchphrase than that. That might be a little too, I don't know. But
Genitals to the, I don't want to
um,
say, yeah, I
yeah,
don't want to
I
make
mean,
it gender specific. So let's just go genitals to the, I
yeah,
don't know what.
yeah.
Um, so yeah, I totally agree with the sentiment. And this is one thing that we talked about with natural selection, which was Harry Bryant, I remember specifically like going hard, but not making waves, but leaving an impression in the judges. And unfortunately, he was surfing against surfers who were also going very hard and making waves. But there would be a scenario where there's just another surfer not going as hard and playing it safe and making mediocre barrels. And I feel like the natural selection judges would have deemed Harry the winner in that scenario.
And it's interesting that something like natural selection, these types of things are sadly they're what's needed to push the envelope and disrupt what is occurring on the World Surf League as far as the judging. Now, look, I'd like to hear from listeners out there. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe you got to make it mentality, that there's a valid reason for it. But my sense is that this kind of comes from, I don't know, where does it come from? It comes from snowboarding, or does this come from surfing, or does this come from skateboarding?
Yeah, I think so. I think it probably comes from skate competition. Um, I've got an additional question for you. Did you see Italo's heat?
Yes. Yeah, where he basically was just like throwing air after air after air after air after air, and eventually he landed one. And there's something that makes me vomit in my mouth a little bit about that. I'm not sure what it is.
Boom, perfect. That's why I'm bringing it up. I'm glad that you had that visceral reaction. I think maybe Stab Magazine did the job of posting a video, editing all those attempts together, and then literally 12 attempts on, again, the waves are crappy. There's closeouts. And so Italo is just throwing everything at the wall, to use a different analogy, and then finally lands a big stretched out, impressive air. Um, so we'll talk about what you were feeling, but also I had a couple of listeners DM the clip to me and they're like, this is the ugliest thing I've ever seen. Even the air that he lands, this is god awful. Like I looked at it and I thought, technically, that's an incredibly difficult thing to do. Probably because I just expect Italo to have a certain style that I don't like and agree with. So it didn't really shock my system to see it. But when I got the DMs, I really analyzed it and I'm like, you're right, that is atrocious looking. And it's the result of trying 12 prior and not landing. And so now you're just thrilled to land the 113th final one. But it was an impressive air, no doubt, but it just was ugly as could be. So I don't know where we land on that in terms of judging either.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I don't blame Elo at all, by the way. I think he's
Yeah.
just trying to win his heat. And But I
And
guess
he
it comes
did.
down to the waves are shitty, and the waves need to be the stars. Is kind of what it boils down to here.
I think it does always boil down to that because Italo is only trying all of these things because he's in the circumstance that he's in, you know?
Yeah.
And so it's funny, Jack Robinson always becomes the shining example because he earns it. But the idea of him denigrating his own style and prowess to service these conditions and this judging format is such a waste of talent and time. And it's why John opted out of the tour this year. Because when the waves turn on ever so briefly, Jack gives you the glimpse of what he's actually capable of doing. And you go, holy cow, nobody else would have made that. And he only got a two. So now they're slapping him in the face again. But it's like he's the only guy around who could do that to that level. Could we please just put him somewhere where he does that all the time? You know?
Please, pretty please, 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 please.
So that's the frustration. I mean, look, I mentioned at the very top, I haven't watched any of this event other than the clips that make it to social media after the fact.
Yeah,
This is why. This is
yeah,
why. I'm
me
not going to
too.
waste my time, you know?
I
And
know
I'm
I'm
certainly
not
not going
good.
to wake up in the middle of the night to do it.
No, it's not super exciting. And sadly, they got really, as you know, we mentioned it last time, they got really great waves the day before the event. But
Some
even
inc-
then, I mean, I think the spot blows out pretty early and it just turns into,
well,
just not the most ideal situation.
so I had that in my notes too, which was, is it worth even keeping Portugal on tour? I mean, obviously, I think there's financial incentives for the WSL to do it, and that's why we see it year after year. But really, just as a user, we see a couple of highlight clips every once in a while. Those seem great, but even with those, is it worth keeping it on tour? And my answer was going to be no, because those those eventuate for half of a days of competition every 4 years. And the rest of the time is what we're watching now.
Where do they go this time of year to get the best possible competitive surfing situation? The waves, the best possible waves. Where do we send them if we're the puppet masters?
I don't know. You tell me.
Morocco.
Ah,
I mean, it's not really waves of consequence, but talk about lots of opportunity.
yeah.
Uh, but maybe that's not at the end of the day, there's just a few locations that are like waves of consequence worthy, you
Yeah.
know.
Yep.
I don't
Totally.
know.
Well, in other surf news or surf contest news, Julian Wilson announced his comeback. I think this
What?
happened after. Yeah. So news to you as well. The WSL is giving Julian Wilson the wild card spots in the Challenger Series events this year. 5 Challenger Series events. So Julian has an opportunity to then earn his way onto the CT in 2026.
Wow. Are you chomping at the bit to see a comeback story like an Aki or a Curran or one of these stories?
Kelly? Yes, I am because it's Julian. I would not necessarily be if you told me it was Tiago Perez trying out or Eritz Aramburu or something. But Julian Wilson is he's the level that he does it at is still totally relevant. And furthermore, I think that he is unique in that his fundamentals and his technical aerial game are and style when you come there's nobody who has all three of those things in a blend in the way that he does.
Well, it'll certainly be interesting to follow how this plays out, right? Julian's, actually, you mentioned it earlier in this show. I sense that Julian's biggest problem is that he's constantly trying to conform. He surfs so great when he just goes out and surfs,
Yeah. Yeah.
and Challenger Series, they're not always held in the best ways. I'm trying to remember. They'll probably go to South Africa, right, for
Yeah,
one of,
they've got Bolito,
yeah.
Sakurema, Huntington, Aracera, and there's one other one. Oh, Newcastle.
Yeah. Well, that levels the playing field right there. I think that Julian, by the way, can do great at all of those spots. He's not like he's a good bad wave surfer, so to speak. But he would really shine in, you know, the box or something like that.
J-Bay. I mean, he'd shine
Yeah.
in a number of spots on tour, and he has in the past. But I think I've seen Julian surfing the last year, and his surfing is still at like he's still fit. He's still doing it at the highest level. But again, the he has the fundamental kind of foundation that Ethan Ewing has, but he has the airs of Felipe Toledo and techie airs too, with the grabs and the flicks and the spin, like shove it's, varials, stuff like that.
Was he in good shape?
Yes. And
How
then
old?
he's like 34, I feel, maybe
Oh
35.
my God. This will be the, this is the kind of thing the WSL actually really needs. Like they need a story like this.
Well, they gifted the wild cards to
34-year-old
him, so
comes
they
back and
recognize
wins the
that.
world title at, 8-foot cloud break in the year 2026.
He's 36.
Oh my God, he'll be 37 because he won't be on tour this year, right?
No, it'd be next year.
He'll be on tour when he's 37.
Yeah.
And who knows? That could be the year Gabe might come back. John might come back. Who knows?
Or they don't, and that leaves a
Right.
berth.
Guess who won world titles when Kelly Slater wasn't on tour?
Uh
Aki
Sonny
or
Garcia.
Sonny. Aki, the two comeback guys.
Yeah.
Aki would say.
Yeah.
Probably
So
fun.
I'm rooting for it, and I'm just thrilled to see Julian. I think he's one of my favorite surfers. So
Yeah. Look, you know what? Any news story is a good story, and we all love a comeback story. So let's see it happen. I'm all
yeah.
for it. I'm here for it.
Yep. I wanted to bring listeners up to speed in case you've seen anything on social media about Puerto Rico and the protests that are happening. This is all in relation to a bike path that's being planned and construction was attempting to start at Rincon, Puerto Rico. This directly affects the waves, Tres Palmas, Dogmans, Marias, indicators, and domes. They're all at risk. And essentially, this is a plan that was recently approved by the governing bodies, but based on a coastal survey that was done 20 years ago in 2004. So the protesters are saying that they're blocking the construction and the equipment from entering the site. And they're basically saying the proposed path will cause coastal erosion and risk those surf spots. They're just asking for an updated coastal survey to be done before work is actually done. Um, excuse me. I can't identify if the reason why they're using a 20-year-old study and survey is because it just takes that long for bureaucracy's wheels to turn, and that they did the work, the survey then, and then put all the orders in place, and they're finally getting approval to do the construction now. But in that amount of time, the coastline has changed drastically. And so the environmentalists and the protesters are saying this will absolutely damage the coast and these spots.
Wow. Well, look, have you ever been to Puerto Rico? The waves are so fun, and it's such a beautiful place to surf, and and a great
I have a question for
Hispanic
you.
culture too. Yeah.
It's always surprising to me when the surfers involved, when people are just worried about the surf spot itself.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, we don't want a bike path because it's going to make the waves less good.
Yeah.
And I'm a surfer, so I want the waves to be good as well. But the primary concern should be the damage to the environment and the coast and all that sort of stuff. Um, and I think it is for a lot of these activists and protesters. Their heart actually is concerned about the larger issues here rather than just their own surfing. But at the same time, I do think that the surf community um, is relevant. Like ultimately you follow this path, and the bike path is because we want to encourage or we want to make it more desirable for tourists. Well, those tourists need hotels and they want restaurants. And so it's a part of a much larger development plan, oftentimes from the local government and the planning committees and stuff like that. So the bike path is it's an harbinger, I guess, of further development. And that's what the real risk is.
Yeah. I don't know too much about the Puerto Rico situation that you're discussing other than what you've told me. So I can't speak to it with any sort of authority, but more will be revealed. I guess I don't have a whole lot of commentary on it other than,
Yeah.
let's see what plays out.
Well, when you look at regions of the world that have been overdeveloped, let's say Southern California, and regions of the world that have not been commercially developed, um, those ones are the ones that are most highly valued now in all assets respects, both
Yeah.
from kind of a tourist standpoint. It's a hot commodity because it's underdeveloped. There's fewer people there, so real estate prices do continue to go up. Environmentally, they're more valued because it's pristine. And so I think the general long-term approach should be less development,
Yeah. Well,
especially right along the coast.
yeah, it's a ongoing battle, right?
Always.
Property rights versus the well-being of this community and society.
Yeah,
Never.
always.
Uh,
Um, Go ahead.
you, no, we got to wrap it up because we got a
Yep.
special segment coming up, and I've got a hard out.
Yep. I'll give you one quick must-see moment presented by Treeswax, treeswax.com. Petroleum-free surf wax. Somebody just posted, I want to say Nalu Films posted this footage from a film called Pacific Dreams from 1990. Buttons Kaluyo Kalani surfing, I don't know, V-Land or something on a short single fin. Have you watched this footage?
Yeah, it's really great, isn't it? What a
It
super fun surfing.
What I felt is you really see surfboard design evolution taking place. Buttons is riding a shorter board than a lot of people, but you can see how creative he's approaching the wave. And you can also see where the board is preventing him from getting there to the fullest expression of the turn that he's trying to do. So you could see him taking that board back to Ben Ipa, or Ben Ipa looking at the footage and going, we should add some more rocker. Like, God, it looks like you're pushing through that turn and the board's kind of laying flat. And it's not really, you could really make a tighter turn if I gave you some more rocker. And sure enough, the next year you see boards with a little bit more rocker and you see more radical turns happening on that section. And so this is really one of those examples. There's a lot of them throughout surf history where you're like the Shane Herring or the surfer of the moment was just thinking outside of the box and they were pushing the board to its total limit. And then you see the shapers of that era going, I see what you're doing. I see where you're going. Let me build it for you. And then boom, you have these flash points where things just explode, growth, progression.
Yeah, for sure. Good stuff.
So I loved it. Must see moment presented by Treeswax. And then my final note is just, especially in relation to the Rincon conversation, but Surfrider. Go become a member, surfrider.org. The ocean needs more friends. They're involved in so many initiatives at any given point. They need help. I'm kind of shocked at, if you look at a percentage of surfers, how many or how few of them actually support the Surfrider Foundation because it's essential. Get on it.
Yeah. Look, if you love the oceans, you love Surfrider, and if you're a surfer, you love the ocean. So do the math.
And if you're a human, you need the ocean, even
Whoa,
if you don't surf.
taking it to a human level. All
Yeah.
right.
All right, Scott.
Hey, look, David, great show. Until next time, adios and aloha.